Here with me to talk about those Buffalo Bills is longtime Bills fan Corey Seyler. How did you become a Bills fan, and how long have you been a Bills fan?
I think I've been Bills fan since 5 or 6, so growing up. So as a young kid, you don't really realize how good your team was, and like now, I kind of look back. Okay, the Bills were always on, so I was always watching. My friends were Bills fans. I grew up out near Philadelphia, and the Eagles weren't very good that time. So that's who I saw, and I started rooting for them and stayed with them through the drought, and never stopped watching them. And then things turn around lately. It's been good. It reminds me of watching them when I was younger.
What was your most memorable Bills moment?
There's two, and there's one it's not a Bills game. It was the Bengals Ravens game. It's one of my favorite moments because I remember watching the game and watching Tyler Boyd take that pass and get a touchdown, and watching the Bills locker room on the split screen, and everyone going crazy because they handled their business, beat Miami, and broke the 20-year drought to get into the playoffs and go play Jacksonville, even though they lost. But that was one of my favorite ones. Most recently, having lived through the Tom Brady just pummeling the Bills all the time, last year's Patriots game has to rank up there, and you don't punt, and you just basically put a whooping on the Patriots, who've been doing that to you for 20 years, haunching that. So that was watching Allen they didn't punt. That's a perfect game.
Was there a point in the season you were confident that the Bills were returning to the playoffs?
Yeah, I think that was the expectation. And it's funny, I grew up out in Philly, so I saw Andy Reid, like the Andy Reid Eagles, and it was like you knew going into the season that they were going to either win the division or compete, and they were going to, and that was the expectation. That's been the expectation. Von Miller, Jamison Crowder. Can't think there was a couple other guys. They draft James Cook. You were going to get Trey Davies right back at some point. You're like, okay, that's kind of the expectation, and then you see them come out first game and blow the defending champs out of the water.
What was the point of the season? Was it just that Rams game that basically destroying the Rams that was making guys feel okay, we can play with anyone. If it's the champs, we can beat anybody.
I don't know if it was the Rams game. I think it was. You look at the stretch of games they had in the beginning of the year, and you had the Rams, you had the Titans, you had the Chiefs. I'm trying to think. Can't think of the other two teams that were in the Dolphins. And going into your bye week, in the Steelers. So those 5 teams, and except for the Dolphins, I think all of them were playoff teams last year. The Titans beat you going into the bye week last year, and the Chiefs and you beat the Chiefs, but beat you in the playoffs. So going into the bye week, it was like, okay, if they can get through that and be 4-1, then it's pretty good that you're going to get into the playoffs. And the one loss, didn't expect it to be Miami. I expected to go into not to win Kansas City. Didn't expect the way they played against Tennessee because they just blew doors off, and maybe it was kind of evident on how Tennessee ended up this year. But that was once you got through that, kind of have to come out on the other side of the bye week. We're going to make the playoffs now. Now let's see how we do November again, because November was the downfall last year.
What was the game that worried you a little bit in the schedule? Was there anything in particular that sort of made you concerned?
I wanted to see how they came out in the bye week. I was rightfully concerned in how we played game coming out. If you watch the second half, they weren't great. The second half, and then they went and played the Jets, and that game got away from them and they lost it. So you kind of start to see those. So that stretch after the bye week worried me. Dustin came out and said, "You know what? We're going to punch them in the mouth," and that's what happened last year when they played. And Miami came out and Miami beat that. Miami lost, but they came out and basically showed the team if you go toe to toe with them physically, they're not going to know how to take it. So that was kind of the worry. This will happen again this year.
Looking at the AFC bracket, who do you feel the Bills match up the best with?
I think the Bills match up the best. Miami, because there's familiarity. With 2 out, it's you never look past the opponent. I think they match up well against them. I think they match up well against everyone in the AFC. Roster with potentially getting Micah Hyde back was a good report that he was on the field practicing, who was supposed to be out the whole year.
Who's the team that concerns you the most in the AFC bracket? Is it Kansas City? Is it Cincinnati? Is it anybody else that we haven't mentioned? Is it the plucky Jacksonville squad that could possibly play spoiler?
I do think Cincinnati, just because they have so many weapons. Not cover. You've got Hayden Hurst, you've got Jamar Chase, you got T. Higgins, you got Tyler Boyd, you've got Joe Mixon. Not really help. I mean, they had some injuries that you saw last year how the Rams beat them is that they just beat them up front. I think the offense, the team that worries me. Joe Burrow's proving to be everything is advertised. Top 5 quarterback, probably be an MVP at some point in the next 5.
I would be remiss if we didn't mention the Damar Hamlin situation that was going on. Especially, thankfully, he is recovered and he is healthy. He's out of the hospital. Things like that. Do you feel that because of that, Buffalo has sort of gained a status, a huge following and support nationwide, especially because of that? And you see it everywhere. Fans of other teams have put up the 3. And do you feel like that could also make them sort of a team of destiny and put the momentum soundly in their favor?
The Hamlin, that was terrifying. I don't know how. Again, the way that the players and the coaches got themselves was just something you've never seen. People were like, they could have restarted the game. They could have played it out. They did the best. Watching one of your teammates going through that on the field, and they made the right decision. I think ultimately not playing the game. Everything connected to his health. So I think that has given us a boost. You saw the support. And the outpouring for everybody across the country. I think that everyone's gonna be rooting for him. Rooting to see him out there because you guarantee if they play the Bengals, he will be at that game. I mean, if he's not at the game against Miami, that goes beyond football. I think people are just rooting for him as a person because a pick guy, very much active in the community. I think that was felt across country. So I think that does give them something. On the other side of that, I think that it's one of those emotional highs that gets the players up. I think you actually saw a little bit of that against Patriots. I mean, the Patriots game this past week, the Bills at one point were down 17-14. You think they kind of it weighed on them. I think that's something it weighs on you when you get into a game like that. And again, I think now with that weighing on them the last time they were on the field, that happened.
Going to the Super Bowl prediction, who do you have coming out of the AFC? Who do you have coming out of the NFC? Who wins the game, and what is the final score?
Super Bowl prediction, I had the Bills. The Bills getting through here. I think it's going to be a tough road, but I think this is the year, and you might see a neutral site game in Atlanta, which would be fun to see a neutral site game in a big dumb stadium, kind of pre-Super Bowl. Like the Bills come out of the AFC. The NFC, I think the Niners, they're just they peaked at the right time. They're getting Debo back. I think the Niners come out of the NFC and Niners Bills Super Bowl. I think on your Cat podcast said earlier, I think it's gonna be a high scoring affair. I think it'll be like 35-28 Bills. Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me back. I think it's the second time I've done this. We did this a couple years ago when they first got in the playoffs. I think against Houston, and that was not much has changed, but it's good.